wasn't human at all. Long before gods ruled the skies and men ruled the earth, there was a titan, a being of immense power who looked at humanity not with contempt, but with compassion. His name was Prometheus. In a world where fire belonged only to the divine, where light was reserved for Olympus and darkness was the rightful domain of mortals, Prometheus did the unthinkable. He stole the sacred flame, not just to give us warmth, but to ignite something far more dangerous: thought, creativity, defiance. You may have heard the story. The Titan punished by Zeus, chained to a rock, his liver devoured by an eagle day after day. But what if that tale was only the surface? What if this wasn't a myth about theft, but about control? Fire, in ancient times, wasn't just a tool. It was a symbol of knowledge, of evolution, of freedom. And giving that power to humanity meant giving them the key to challenge the very gods who created them. That's what Zeus feared. Not the flame itself, but the mind it could awaken. This isn't a story about punishment. It's a story about the cost of awakening a species. So the next time you light a match, stare into a flame, or dare to question what you've been told, remember the Titan who gave you that right. This is the forbidden story of Prometheus, and it's time to uncover what they never told you. In most myths, titans are cast as relics of a forgotten age, violent, arrogant, consumed by chaos. They were overthrown, defeated, buried beneath the weight of newer, shinier gods. But Prometheus, he was different. While others warred, Prometheus watched. While Olympus claimed the heavens and the earth, he looked to something far more fragile: us. According to ancient Greek tradition, Prometheus shaped the first humans from clay and breath. He didn't create them as pets or servants, but as mirrors, imperfect reflections of divine potential. And unlike Zeus, who saw humanity as reckless and easily corrupted, Prometheus saw possibility. He saw light trying to break through dust. But compassion in the world of gods is dangerous. To side with mortals is to stand against Olympus. When Zeus divided the world and handed out power among the gods, he left humanity in the cold, literally. The gift of fire, the power to cook, forge, and survive, was denied. Not just out of punishment, but to keep them dependent, weak, grateful. Prometheus couldn't accept that. He tried reason first. Legend says he tricked Zeus during a sacrificial ritual. He wrapped bones in glistening fat and meat in a less appetizing package, forcing Zeus to pick the better-looking option. When the god realized he had been fooled, he was furious. In retaliation, Zeus not only revoked fire from mankind, he made it clear: no more gifts for mortals. But Prometheus had already made his choice, and he was not done giving. He didn't just steal a torch. He didn't simply hand over warmth. He committed an act of rebellion so profound it echoes across every civilization that has ever dared to defy a ruler. He handed humanity the spark of divine potential, and in that single act, by breaking the law of gods, he broke something else too: the hierarchy between heaven and earth. Prometheus became the first to say no, the first to disobey not out of pride but love, the first to challenge the natural order not for himself, but for those without a voice. It was not a theft, it was a sacrifice, and it came with a price. But Zeus was not done, and neither was the fire. Fire was not just warmth, not just survival. In the ancient world, fire was something far more sacred. It was the heartbeat of civilization and the soul of the divine. To the gods, fire represented more than energy. It was a tool of creation and destruction. The flicker of flame mirrored the flicker of thought. The spark that forges weapons could also forge ideas. And that was the true danger, because once a mortal held fire, they no longer needed to beg for the favor of Olympus. They could cook their own meals, build their own shelters, shape tools, cast metal. More than that, they could dream. The act of giving fire to humanity wasn't just a gift, it was an awakening that Zeus could not allow. The myth tells us Prometheus crept into Olympus, stole a fragment of the eternal flame, and carried it to Earth hidden inside a hollow stalk of fennel, a simple plant. But in that moment, it became more than a vessel. It became a weapon of revolution. Imagine the power. A single spark in the hands of mortals, lighting not just the night, but the mind. Zeus wasn't afraid of flames, he commanded lightning. He wasn't afraid of destruction, he ruled storms and war. What he feared was independence, because gods like kings rely on obedience, and Prometheus had just given their subjects a reason to rise. In nearly every myth, theft is punished. But this wasn't theft in the traditional sense. It was a redistribution of power. A titan lifting up a species that had been denied its birthright. And fire? Fire was only the beginning. With fire came technology. With technology came knowledge, and with knowledge came the ability to question. Prometheus didn't just deliver heat, he delivered consciousness. And that terrified the gods more than any rebellion ever could. So yes, he broke the law of Olympus, but what he really broke was the illusion of divine authority. Because once a being knows it can create, it no longer worships the creator in the same way. And Prometheus knew that. That's why the fire was forbidden, because it lit more than campfires. It lit the path out of darkness. Zeus had ruled with thunder and lightning. His power was absolute, drawn from fear, ceremony, and the belief that gods stood above all. But what happens when mortals start to see themselves as more than worshippers? That was the true fear. Zeus didn't punish Prometheus because he stole fire. He punished him because he broke the divine monopoly on power. He gave mortals a glimpse of what it felt like to be godlike. And once a species tastes autonomy, true, unfiltered autonomy, it doesn't go back. Prometheus hadn't just lit the world. He'd shattered the hierarchy. Zeus understood something terrifying. Control is only as strong as ignorance. As long as humanity feared the dark, they would obey. As long as they relied on Olympus for survival, the gods reigned supreme. But Prometheus handed them the very tool that dissolved dependence. He gave them the means to shape, to question, to invent, to defy, and perhaps worst of all, to remember. Because fire wasn't just a light, it became a torch passed through generations. It carried stories, warnings, revolutions. It carried names that shouldn't be remembered. So Zeus responded the only way a fearful god can. Not with mercy, but with a message. He chained Prometheus to a rock at the edge of the world. No trial, no debate, only pain. Each day an eagle would descend, its wings silent, its talons precise, and tear into Prometheus's flesh. It would devour his liver, slowly, methodically, and by nightfall it would grow back, only for the cycle to begin again. This was not just punishment. This was theater, a warning etched into myth designed to terrify any who dared follow his example. And yet, it didn't work, because the fire had already spread. The act of rebellion had already taken root, and deep in the minds of those early humans, a truth flickered and refused to die. That perhaps the gods weren't immortal because they were more powerful, but because they had kept mortals from knowing their own strength. Zeus feared fire, yes, but what he feared more was what would happen when we stopped fearing him. It's clear that the fire Prometheus gave to humanity wasn't just a flickering flame. It was a symbol, a transmission, a key. But what exactly did it unlock? To understand that, we have to step outside the myth and look at what fire has always meant beneath the surface. In nearly every ancient culture, fire wasn't just a physical force. It was sacred, untouchable. Only shamans, priests, or gods could invoke it freely. It was the heart of the ritual, the tongue of the divine. To steal it was to interrupt a conversation between heaven and earth. Prometheus didn't just steal an element, he stole access. He gave humans the right to commune with creation on their own terms. And more than that, he gave them mirrorhood. With fire, humans could shape tools, build homes, forge weapons, but deeper still, they could reflect, they could write. They could question, they could choose. This was the part Zeus couldn't allow. because to choose is to become responsible. To become responsible is to become sovereign. And once humans realized they were sovereign, the gods could no longer rule through fear. They had to rule through merit, through meaning. And the gods were never ready for that. That's why Prometheus is dangerous, because he didn't break a rule, he rewrote the script. In that sense, Prometheus isn't just a character in mythology. He is a symbol that reappears throughout history. In every thinker who dares to speak truth in the face of power. In every scientist who is ridiculed before being celebrated. In every soul who lights a candle not to pray, but to see more clearly. Prometheus is the flame inside every act of rebellion born from love. And that is why, even today, the story remains unsettling, because we are left with a haunting question. If knowledge is sacred, who gets to decide who receives it? Who decides which truths are allowed to burn, which must be buried? That's the forbidden meaning behind the fire. Not heat, not survival, but freedom. The kind of freedom that doesn't ask permission, the kind that refuses to be extinguished. The gods thought they had silenced him. They thought that by chaining him to a rock, by turning his punishment into myth, they could bury his legacy beneath fear and forgetfulness. But they were wrong, because the flame Prometheus gave us wasn't just passed down. It multiplied. It became every bonfire that carried a story, every invention sparked from curiosity, every whispered question that began with, what if they were wrong? You see, Prometheus isn't just a tale about a titan and a torch. He is the echo behind every forbidden idea, the ember glowing in every act of resistance. The reminder that power, real power, is not the ability to control others, but the ability to enlighten them. And that's why the fire still burns, not in temples, not in the halls of Olympus, but in us. Every time you seek a truth others say is off limits, every time you choose knowledge over obedience, every time you light a match in the dark, not to destroy, but to see, that's Prometheus, living through you. The myth is not over. It never was. So if this story stirred something in you, if this flame feels familiar, then maybe you were never meant to watch myths die in books. Maybe you were meant to help keep them alive. Here at the Myth Archive, we don't just retell ancient legends, we decode them, we unearth the forbidden, and we bring the buried truths back to light. If you want to be part of that journey, if you're ready to dive deeper into the stories they never wanted you to question, then join us. Like this video if it lit a spark, subscribe to stay connected to the fire, and share it so the myth doesn't end with you. The gods may have punished Prometheus, but they couldn't stop what he started. Now the question is, what will you do with the fire?